Namaskar, this is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. We begin tonight with a defiant Donald Trump. The US Supreme Court has struck down his tariffs. Trump has called the decision nonsensical and ridiculous. He's doubling down on the tariff war. We look at how the world is responding, how the legal setback may have shifted the balance, and whether this means advantage India. Also in focus, war clouds hover over Iran. India has told its citizens to leave the country. In Bangladesh, Prime Minister Tariq Rahman moves to consolidate power. In Pakistan, fresh strikes on the Taliban in Afghanistan. In the run-up to Women's Day, a stark statistic, 79% of women want leadership roles in India, only 1% make it there. Also, why the Indian Air Force has grounded its Tejas fleet, why Mexico has descended into turmoil after a top drug lord was killed, why the internet is obsessed with Punch the Monkey, and why Germany wants to ban sick leaves. All this and more lined up. The headlines first. The US accuses China of massively expanding its nuclear arsenal. Washington has doubled down on claims that Beijing has conducted secret nuclear tests. The US insists that China must be part of any future arms control treaty, but Beijing has already rejected calls to enter such negotiations. New York orders a citywide travel ban as a major storm hits the US Northeast. More than 5,000 flights have been cancelled. Schools, highways and bridges have all been shut. New Jersey and Pennsylvania have declared states of emergency. From Maryland to Maine, more than 40 million people are under blizzard warnings. Chad shuts down its border with the Sudan after several clashes between the two countries. For almost 3 years now, the Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces have been fighting the government troops. Since December, Chad has lost at least 9 soldiers in the border violence. The Australian Prime Minister backs calls to remove Andrew from the royal line of succession. Anthony Albanese sends a letter to his British counterpart, stating that his government would back such a proposal. This comes just days after the former prince was briefly arrested over his ties with sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And India shines at the BAFTA Awards as Boong wins the Best Children's and Family Film Award. Prime Minister Narendra Modi hails the achievement. Boong is a coming-of-age story of a schoolboy from Manipur. It was a sole Indian nominee at the BAFTAs this year. When the Supreme Court talks, you listen. That's how most democracies work. It doesn't matter if you're the most popular president in history. It doesn't matter if you have a brute majority in parliament. When the top court says something, you listen. Well, not Donald Trump. Last Friday, the US Supreme Court struck down his global tariffs. They found that Trump had exceeded his authority as president. And frankly, it was a godsend for the US president. His tariffs were already unpopular among the people. They were raising prices. They were dampening growth. So a wise politician would have cashed in. Basically, they would have used this verdict to roll back the tariffs. Again, not Donald Trump. He attacked the court for its decision and he imposed a new tariff using a different law.
The Supreme Court's ruling on tariffs is deeply disappointing, and I'm ashamed of certain members of the court, absolutely ashamed, for not having the courage to do what's right for our country. Foreign countries that have been ripping us off for years are ecstatic. They're so happy. And they're dancing in the streets, but they won't be dancing for long, that I can assure you. I know the people that brought the lawsuit, and, you know, they're sleazebags, major sleazebags, but I know them. And they're foreign country centric. Today, I will sign an order to impose a 10% global tariff under Section 122 over and above our normal tariffs already being charged. And we're also initiating several Section 301 and other investigations to protect our country from unfair trading practices of other countries and companies.
It started off at 10%, but within hours, Trump raised it to 15%. This time, he's using another law from the 1970s, the 1974 Trade Act. This act allows the US president to impose sweeping tariffs, but there are conditions. For starters, the rate cannot be over 15%, plus they only last for 150 days. The tariffs last for 150 days. After that, Trump will have to get approval from the US Congress. If not, the tariffs will automatically repeal. Though Trump says he does not need that. Look at his latest social media post. I'm quoting. I do not have to go back to Congress to get approval of tariffs. It has already been gotten in many forms a long time ago. They were also just reaffirmed by the ridiculous and poorly crafted Supreme Court decision. Now, it's not clear what Donald Trump is trying to say, but as things stand, this is a temporary measure. The US Congress will not support a 15% global tariff, meaning the White House will need another solution, and they will need it fast. In fact, Trump was absolutely livid on Friday. Even by his standards, he blew a fuse. The president called the US judges fools and lapdogs. He called them an embarrassment to their families. And today, these attacks continued. Trump unleashed a new level of pettiness today. He says he won't use uppercase for the Supreme Court anymore. Listen to this, I'm quoting. The Supreme Court, I will be using lowercase letters for a while based on a complete lack of respect. Accidentally and unwittingly gave me as President of the United States far more powers and strength than I had prior to their ridiculous, dumb, and very internationally divisive ruling. Like I said, a new level of pettiness. But what exactly is Trump talking about here? How does this verdict accidentally empower him? And if it does, why is Trump so angry about it? Why isn't he celebrating the verdict? Because what he's saying is not true. The verdict is a major setback to the White House, and as always, Trump is just trying to spin it. The question is, who does this actually benefit? Who does the verdict benefit? Some countries did negotiate rates lower than 15%. Countries like the UK and Australia, they secured 10% tariffs from the White House. For them, this verdict is a setback. But for most of Asia, this is a better equation. India, for instance, had negotiated 18% tariffs. China was facing 32% tariffs, and most of Southeast Asia is at around 20%. So for these countries, there is a reduction in tariffs. Having said that, here's a bigger question. What happens to the trade deals? Well, that depends on which country you're talking about. Western countries are not too happy about this change. The European Union is set to stop the ratification of its trade deal. They want some clarity first. You see, the EU had secured a 15% tariff rate from the White House. They'd also obtained zero tariffs on some crucial sectors. Now that advantage of zero tariffs is gone, which is why Brussels is putting the ratification on hold. They say a deal is a deal. You cannot raise tariffs after sealing a deal. Meanwhile, in Asia, the thinking must be quite the opposite. Their trade deals with Donald Trump are already unpopular at home, and they will see this as a chance to renegotiate, to basically seek better terms. China, for example, would be thrilled. They are calling for a review of the trade equation.
China urges the United States to cancel its unilateral tariff measures on its trading partners. There are no winners in a trade war, and that protectionism leads nowhere.
It's easy for American rivals like China, but for American partners, it's a bit more complicated. Technically, you can now play hardball with Trump. The US Supreme Court has given you the perfect leverage. But if you do so, you will antagonize the US president. He can still use other laws to hurt your exports. He can also hit you elsewhere, like on defense or semiconductors, which is why American allies will be wary. Yes, they will take time to reevaluate their options, but walking away from the deals, well, that will be tough. Just consider the example of Japan. Japan has agreed to invest $550 billion in the US economy, and that pledge is a crucial part of the US-Japan trade deal. The first package, worth around $36 billion, was announced last week, and despite the Supreme Court verdict, Tokyo says it will go ahead. It will still invest the first package of $36 billion into the US economy, and that's the expectation from Washington as well. Trump's trade envoy says they will not cancel existing agreements. Those pledges and tariffs will continue. The problem is that's a direct clash with the Supreme Court verdict, the American Supreme Court's verdict. The US will stop collecting the reciprocal tariffs from tomorrow, and on the same day, it will start imposing the new tariffs. These two tariff regimes are very different from each other. For instance, Trump's old regime promises 10% tariffs to Australia, but the new regime imposes 15% tariffs. So why would the Australian government simply accept this change? That's the first looming flashpoint. The second is the issue of refunds. American importers paid the tariffs imposed by Donald Trump. They paid it, and then they transferred the burden to American customers. We're talking around $134 billion. That's the extra payment. Technically, this money must be refunded to those importers. The US Supreme Court did not weigh in on that. This issue will be decided by lower courts. But even if they order a refund, American citizens won't get a penny. And they're the ones who bore the brunt of the higher tariffs. Yet not a single dollar will go to the American customers. Only the importers will get that money. It's one of the reasons why businesses are happy. But what about the markets? How are investors reacting to this news? Well, there's no extraordinary movement. The S&P 500 is around 0.4% down. The German DAX is also down by 0.5%, and the British FTSE is just 0.2% up. And what explains this lukewarm response? Well, it's the uncertainty. The American Supreme Court's verdict does not mark the end of Trump's tariff war. In fact, he's doubling down on it. This raises the prospect of more temporary measures, more on and off tariffs, and maybe a looming institutional showdown in Washington. And that is why the markets are wary. The tariff verdict may have weakened Trump's hand, but it has not weakened his resolve. So the tariff chaos is back. Trump is fighting the US Supreme Court and using other laws to reimpose tariffs. Where does that leave the India-US trade deal? New Delhi is trying to figure it out. A team of negotiators was supposed to fly to Washington this week. They were supposed to go to discuss the next steps in the trade deal, but now they have decided not to go. The visit has been deferred. Both sides say they need time to study the Supreme Court order. They insist that this pause does not derail the larger deal. The agreement is still alive, but the balance has clearly shifted. The verdict has created openings for India. India has more room to maneuver now, more room to push back on terms that were earlier non-negotiable. In fact, Trump himself admitted it last week. He said the trade deal with India is still on, but there will be some changes.
The India deal is on here.
So much, Mr. President.
All the deals are on. We're just going to do it a different way.
So it's on, but they will do it differently. That's what Trump has said. What does this verdict mean for India? The US Supreme Court verdict, what does it mean for India? Well, two clear positives have emerged. Number one, the tariffs have come down. Remember, Trump was quick to reimpose tariffs. He started with 10%, then he raised it to 15%. But 15% is still lower than what India was getting in the trade deal. The deal we had was for 18% tariff. So the current 15% is good. Plus, when you add concessions to this mix, the effective tariff rate for India is only 12%. This applies to all trading partners of the US, in fact. And this spells good news for India. The trade deal gave us 18% tariffs, This verdict has brought it down to 12% effectively. That is the first positive. The second positive is less obvious, but it may prove more valuable in the long run. Reports say that India is likely to seek new provisions. It's not renegotiating the deal, it's just rewriting the fine print. And what kind of provisions is India expected to ask for? Legal certainty, safety clauses, basically provisions that protect India if a future court ruling strikes down American policies again.
Prime Minister Modi of India.
Let me put it simply. India does not want to sign a deal today that unravels tomorrow. It wants legal guarantees, and that demand is not unreasonable. India has made substantial concessions in this deal. It has agreed to 0% tariff on most American products. It has committed to buying US goods worth $500 billion over a period of 5 years. India has agreed to buy a wide range of products from the US, from energy supplies to aircraft, precious metals, and tech products. So this is a wide-ranging pact. It deserves legal protection. And last week's Supreme Court order gives India a compelling reason to seek it. So India is better positioned than before, and the markets recognize this. Indian stocks rose today. The Nifty 50 tracks India's top 50 companies. It closed more than 0.5% up in today's trade. The Sensex tracks India's top 30 companies. It gained again more than 0.5% because investors see that Trump's tariff regime has weakened. Having said that, policymakers should not get carried away because Trump has not conceded. He's fighting the top court in his country. The new tariffs he has imposed will be valid for 150 days. After that, he will need congressional approval. Although Trump tried to paint a different picture today, he released a post on Truth Social just a short while back, and I'm quoting from what he said. Any country that wants to play games with the ridiculous Supreme Court decision, especially those that have ripped off the USA for years and even decades, will be met with much higher tariff and worse than that which they just recently agreed to. Buyer beware. That only spells more uncertainty for businesses and America's trade partners. As of today, India maintains that it will stick to the trade deal. So yes, the deal is on, but it is entering a more uncertain phase. India has gained some leverage. Now it must use it wisely before the rules change again. Warships on the horizon, secret succession plans, and desperate rounds of diplomacy. This usually means one thing in geopolitics, that war is coming. In this case, a war between Iran and the United States of America. Most reports say it's a question of when, not if. The US military is locked and loaded. All they need is a green light from President Donald Trump. It's a crucial moment in Iran's modern history, and the people sense it. Protests have broken out in Iranian universities. Students are shouting, "We will reclaim Iran." Most of them are paying tributes to the recent anti-government protesters. Take a look at this. Remember, huge protests rocked Iran in December and January. The regime responded with a bloody crackdown. They killed thousands of innocent protesters, and yet these students are back on the streets again. It tells you how the tide is shifting. The regime is at its weakest point since the revolution of 1979, so rivals, both at home and abroad, smell blood. And the Iranian regime knows this. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has put a succession plan in place. Reports say it has 4 layers of backup, meaning 4 possible replacements for every important role. So if the US kills one, The others are ready. That's Khamenei's plan if the Americans attack. And the man overseeing this plan is Ali Larijani. He hails from a powerful political family in Iran. He's been a long-time advisor to the supreme leader. From 2008 to 2020, he was Speaker of Iran's parliament. In 2021, he negotiated a 25-year cooperation deal with China. And right now, he heads the Supreme National Security Council. Larijani is crushing protests. He's meeting Vladimir Putin in Moscow. He's holding talks with Qatar and Oman. So simply put, he's the second most powerful man in Iran. Even more powerful than President Masoud Pezeshkian. And I'll give you an example of that. During the recent protests, Washington reached out to Iran's foreign ministry. They wanted a back channel to calm the tensions. They wanted back channel talks. So naturally, the foreign ministry asked the Iranian presidency, what should they do? And guess what President Pezeshkian said? Ask Larijani. That's how powerful this man is. His primary mission is to ensure that the regime survives. Now, just to be clear, this does not mean that Ali Larijani will succeed Khamenei. To become supreme leader, you must be a senior Shia cleric. And Larijani is not. Reports say Khamenei has named 3 possible successors. None of their names have been revealed yet, which brings us back to the military tensions. What exactly is Donald Trump's mission here? Indications are that he does not want a full-scale war. His deployments were aimed at intimidating Iran, basically scaring them into making concessions. Trump's special envoy admitted as much.
He's curious as to why they haven't, I don't want to use the word capitulated, but why they haven't capitulated. Why under this sort of pressure with the amount of sea power, naval power that we have over there, why they haven't come to us and said, we profess that we don't want a weapon, so here's what we're prepared to do. And yet it's hard to sort of get them to that place.
Despite the firepower, Iran did not budge. And you can see why. Trump has 2 major demands. 1, Iran must give up nuclear enrichment, and 2, Iran must curb its missile program. The second one, the missile program, is a non-starter for Iran. If they give up the missiles, they will be attacked in the future. That's a guarantee. As for the nukes, Iran is naturally wary. They had signed a nuclear deal with the US back in 2025, and it was Donald Trump who ripped it up. So this time, Iran wants more guarantees and sanctions relief. These issues will likely come up again on Thursday. That's when the US and Iran will meet in Geneva once again on Thursday. It will be their 3rd round of talks in 4 weeks. And it tells you how urgent the situation is. But what if the talks fail? Well, then the ball is in Trump's court. He can either launch a limited strike to force concessions from Iran, and if that fails, he can go all out. He can try to topple the Iranian regime. But here's the deal. Tehran knows exactly what is coming. In fact, everyone knows what is coming. Several countries are asking their citizens to leave Iran. Today, the Indian government also issued an advisory. It is asking Indians to leave Iran because of the tensions. As for the Iranian regime, they've made extensive preparations. They have placed ballistic missiles to the west and the south. From the west, they can hit Israel. From the south, they can hit US warships and bases. Today, Tehran made its position clear. Even a limited strike will get a furious response.
There is no limited strikes. An act of aggression would be regarded as an act of aggression, period. And any state would react to an act of aggression as part of its inherent right of self-defense ferociously. So that's what we would do.
Trump put himself in this position, and now he faces a very difficult choice. Retreat is not even on the table. Trump has to do something to salvage his position, but that something could trigger the worst West Asian war in decades. It will put American warships and soldiers at risk. Yes, in the long term, Iran may lose, but the top leadership will be decapitated. Maybe the top leadership will be decapitated. But in the short term, they can inflict heavy damage. Let's see which way Trump goes. Let's turn to Bangladesh now. The new Prime Minister Tariq Rahman has hit the ground running there. His latest mission is a military rejig. Top leaders of Bangladesh's army are being rotated. We'll focus on the big changes tonight. But first, let's talk about a new Chief of General Staff who's been appointed. This is one of the highest positions in the army. And Prime Minister Tariq Rahman has picked Lieutenant General M. Mainur Rahman. He previously served in army training. Secondly, Bangladesh has recalled its defense advisor at the embassy in New Delhi. That's Brigadier General Hafizur Rahman. He's been promoted to the rank of Major General. He will take charge of an infantry division in Bangladesh. The third change is at military intelligence. Principal Staff Officer Lieutenant General Kamrul Hassan will switch to the role of an ambassador. His previous position will be taken by Lieutenant General Mir Mushfiqur Rahman, an officer who's just been promoted. Now the question is, what has triggered this rejig? There are two main factors. One, the army has always been a powerful force in Bangladesh. They have ruled the country for nearly 15 years, so any government has to keep the military in check. They cannot let any officer accumulate too much power. That's one point. Secondly, a lot of the military brass was appointed by Sheikh Hasina. She also maintained a tight control over the army. She appointed her loyalists to top positions. Maybe that's why Tariq Rahman is changing things up. Maybe he wants new officers in places of power. Whatever the reasoning, the message is quite clear. This new government means business. It has a brute majority in parliament and it plans to use it. At least Tariq Rahman has a mandate. Former interim leader Muhammad Yunus did not have a mandate, and he did a lot more without a mandate. His position itself was problematic. You see, Bangladesh's constitution does not permit interim or caretaker leaders, meaning Yunus's office was made up. It does not exist as a constitutional provision. But guess what does? The office of the president. And yet Yunus tried to undermine it. Bangladesh's president, Mohammad Shahabuddin, has spoken out. He paints a worrying picture of Yunus's rule. No consultation, no protocols, and no cooperation. The president gives the example of foreign visits. Bangladesh's constitution requires the president to be briefed on such visits. Mohammad Yunus undertook around 14 trips since 2024, 14 foreign trips, and each time there was no briefing.
The Constitution says that the chief advisor has to brief me after every foreign trip. But Dr. Yunus did not update me. The chief advisor has to inform me in writing about the talks and discussions that happen overseas. He went abroad some 14 or 15 times, but he never met me after those trips.
What's more, he actively tried to undermine the presidency. Yunus tried to undermine the presidency. Shahabuddin got invites from Qatar and Kosovo, but Yunus unilaterally rejected them. He told both countries that the president was too busy to visit. Apparently, the idea was to erase his office. The president's press team was downsized. His photographs were taken down from embassies, and his public appearances were curbed.
There were attempts to remove me from the presidential post under pressure from certain leaders of the mass uprising. They did not want my name to appear anywhere. They tried to keep me in darkness so that people would not know or recognize me.
Of course, this is just one side of the story. We haven't heard what Mohammad Yunus has to say. Since stepping down, Yunus has returned to his old work. He's back at the Yunus Center, which is a think tank / NGO. He will soon go back to the global speaking circuits. He will hawk his experience as a former interim ruler. It's all very unfortunate, frankly. Yunus presided over a terrible period in Bangladesh. Minorities were repeatedly targeted, the economy crashed, street violence surged dramatically, media houses were torched, the president was allegedly undermined, yet Mohammad Yunus walks away without taking any of the blame, as if nothing happened from July 2024 to February 2026. Now we hope there is a proper dissection of his interim rule as well. Bangladeshis have judged Sheikh Hasina. They have judged even their founder, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Surely Yunus must answer too. How would you describe Pakistan's relationship with the Taliban? 2 words: strategic blowback. Pakistan armed and nurtured the Taliban, it cheered their return to power, and now the same Pakistan is at war with them. It is bombing Taliban territory. There were fresh attacks over the weekend. Pakistani jets fired along the Afghan border. Pakistan says it was targeting terrorists, groups that attack Pakistani forces and find shelter on Afghan soil. But the pictures from the ground tell a different story. Kabul says Pakistani jets did not hit terrorist camps. They hit homes, a religious school, and civilian areas, and that too in the middle of Ramadan. Here's a report.
Pakistan dropped bombs on Afghanistan, not on a military base, on homes, on a religious school. In the middle of Ramadan, Islamabad says it was targeting terrorists. But these pictures from Afghanistan paint a very different story. Homes have been turned into rubble, Pakistani jets stuck in the night, leaving behind a trail of destruction.
Last night in Nangarhar province, in Besut district, at 12 a.m., enemy Punjabi aircraft bombed us. As a result, civilians, including women, children, and elderly people, were martyred with great cruelty during this month of Ramzan. This was a crime. Last night, it felt as if Judgment Day had passed over us.
It was 12 a.m. when the aircraft came. At first, we thought it was an earthquake and everyone ran out of their houses. Then the bombing started. When I returned home, only one person was unharmed, 2 or 3 people were injured, and 8 others were martyred.
Pakistan and Afghanistan share one of the most volatile borders in the world. The two neighbors have been at odds for years. But what happened yesterday was a significant escalation. Pakistan's military launched air raids along the Afghan border. The targets, according to Islamabad, were camps and hideouts belonging to a militant group. That group is called the TTP, the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, better known as the Pakistan Taliban. Now, the TTP is distinct from the Afghan Taliban. The Afghan Taliban governs Kabul. The TTP operates inside Pakistan. It has been waging a violent insurgency against the Pakistani state for years. Pakistan blames Afghanistan for sheltering the TTP. Kabul has consistently denied that. But Islamabad says it has run out of patience. The final trigger came weeks ago. A suicide bomber struck a Shia mosque in Islamabad. The capital itself was hit. The airstrikes over the weekend were Islamabad's response. Pakistan says it killed at least 70 militants, but there was no official confirmation for either figure. However, Kabul is offering a different version of events. The Afghan Ministry of Defense said that various civilian areas were hit. The Afghan Red Crescent Society put the death toll at 18. This includes both women and children. Afghanistan's response was swift and sharp. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs summoned Pakistan's ambassador in Kabul. It registered a formal protest at the highest level. In a statement, Kabul warned that Pakistan would be held responsible for the consequences of these strikes. It also said Pakistan's claims of 70 fighters being killed was inaccurate. India, too, has weighed in. New Delhi's response was direct and deliberate. India condemned the Pakistani airstrikes. New Delhi said the strikes represent another attempt by Pakistan to externalize its internal failures. India also reiterated its support for Afghanistan's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and independence. So what happens next is the critical question. The ceasefire between Pakistan and Afghanistan is fragile. It barely survived 4 months. The TTP continues to operate across the border. Pakistan says it will keep targeting militant infrastructure. That is not a stable situation. And for India, watching 2 hostile neighbors in open confrontation carries its own set of risks. The bombs have fallen, and no one in the region can afford to pretend this ends here.
What does a boardroom in India look like? Glass walls, leather chairs, and PowerPoint slides glowing, just like anywhere else in the world. But who is sitting in those chairs? Imagine there are 10 leaders around the table. In India, only 2 of them are women. Just 2 out of 10. And we are not the ones saying this. A brand new report by KPMG and IMA has shed light on this disparity. Now, first, let's look at the numbers. There are more women in senior roles now. Look at the organizations with more than 30% women leaders. In 2024, about 35% of the organizations had women leaders. In 2026, that number rose to 44%. So yes, there is progress, but this number is just half the story. Here's the full picture. 10% of Indian companies have 0 women leaders. 0. 46% have less than 30% women leaders. 24% have less than 50% women leaders, and only 20% of the companies are close to gender balance. So while some companies are indeed improving, most are clustered near the bottom. And here's the worrying part. 30% of these companies saw no improvement in women leaders over the last 5 years. So progress has not stopped, but it has slowed down. Now, Women's Day is right around the corner. There will be pink roses, there will be panel discussions and big promises. Companies often say we hire men and women equally. Well, that may be true, but the real problem shows up later. In most organizations, women do not make it to leadership roles, even long-term women employees. Less than 30% of them reach the top jobs. Contrast this with the men. Most male employees move up the ladder. So while both start at the same line, they do not finish at the same place. And it's not for lack of effort or ambition. In fact, that's a big myth, and this report has busted it. It says women do not lack ambition. 79% women, according to this report, 79% women want leadership roles. More than half want C-suite jobs, but guess how many get there? How many women sit on boards in India? Just 1%. So out of 100 women who try to break the ceiling, only 1 succeeds. What's worse, a lot of women drop out of the workforce midway. And the most defining career stage is in fact mid-career. It's not entry level, it's not senior level, it's the middle of your career path. That's when most women tend to leave. For the same old reasons: work-life burnout, caregiving responsibilities, culture and bias, limited growth, structural issues. And do notice something common in all of these reasons. Most of these are not personal problems, these are organizational problems. Let me give you another big statistic. 39% of women have experienced or witnessed gender discrimination at work. 39% women. It is not always obvious. It is in fact quite subtle. Things like being overlooked in meetings, not getting high visibility projects, or being judged on past performance while men are judged on potential. And here's where things get uncomfortable. Only 28% of employees believe that promotions are fair. That means 7 out of 10 people do not trust the system. Now, you may have heard of the glass ceiling, but this report says the problem begins much earlier. They call it the broken rung, the first promotion. The promotion from entry level to manager, that rung is broken for women. If women do not get that first promotion at equal rates, they almost never reach the ceiling to break it. And once you miss that first rung, catching up becomes nearly impossible. That's what is happening, in fact, to most women. So we say this report is not just a survey, it is a mirror. It shows a country where women are ambitious, where women are ready to grow, but the companies they work for are not ready for them. Our next story is about the Tejas, India's homegrown fighter jet. It has been grounded. The entire fleet of Tejas jets has been grounded. It's been temporarily taken out of service. The Indian Air Force operates around 30 Tejas aircraft, 30 aircraft. For now, they're not flying, and that's because of safety concerns. Earlier this month, the Tejas overshot the runway during landing. The aircraft was badly damaged. Thankfully, the pilot ejected safely. The Air Force is yet to comment, but the jet is back under scrutiny. Remember that Tejas is central to India's military modernization. It has been suffering a lot of delays. HAL says the jet is safe. HAL is Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. It is a state-run company that builds this jet. It says the Tejas jet has a strong safety record, but the facts seem to point otherwise. Here's a report.
A training mission, a touchdown, and then something went wrong. A Tejas fighter jet was returning to base after a sortie earlier this month. As it touched down at a forward airbase, the landing did not go as planned. The jet overshot the runway and it suffered significant damage to its airframe. Reports point to a suspected brake failure or technical glitch. The pilot, however, ejected safely. The incident is believed to have occurred on February 7th. What followed was telling. The Indian Air Force quietly grounded its entire fleet of about 30 single-seat Tejas jets, all of them pulled back for detailed technical checks. The message was clear: rule out anything systemic before flying again. There has been no official statement from the Air Force so far. This makes the aircraft at the center of this story worth paying attention to. Tejas is India's homegrown light combat fighter jet, the one the country built for itself. A single-engine, multi-role jet designed for air defense, strike missions, and reconnaissance. Built by Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, or HAL, it entered service in 2016 and has been inducted in phases since then. The jet's importance has only grown after the MiG-21 fleet was retired last year. The Air Force is rebuilding its diminishing squadron numbers, and Tejas is one of the aircraft expected to help fill that space. But this incident doesn't sit in isolation. This is the third time the jet has been involved in an accident. In November last year, a Tejas crashed during an aerial display at the Dubai Air Show. The aircraft lost control mid-maneuver, and the pilot did not make it. An investigation into that crash is still underway. Before that, in March 2024, another Tejas jet crashed near the city of Jaisalmer during a training sortie, but the pilot ejected safely in that case. So 3 incidents, a reported grounding, and questions that won't go away. The timing couldn't be worse for HAL. The company has already been under pressure over delays to the Tejas Mark 1A program. The Air Force ordered 83 of these upgraded jets back in 2021. Another order for 97 more aircraft followed last year, but the jets' deliveries have slipped behind schedule. This is largely because of delays in engine supplies. At one point last year, the Air Force itself publicly flagged concerns over timelines and readiness. That scrutiny hasn't gone away, and this incident has only added to it. Amid the latest reports, HAL says there was no crash. It described the episode as a minor technical incident on the ground.
There has been no reported crash of the light combat aircraft Tejas. LCA Tejas maintains one of the world's best safety records among contemporary fighter aircraft. As a standard operating procedure, the issue is being analyzed in depth, and HAL is working closely with the Indian Air Force for a speedy resolution.
But the markets were less convinced. HAL's share price tumbled nearly 4% as news of the Tejas incident spread. This is a sign that investors are watching this closely. For now, the technical checks are underway. HAL insists there is nothing wrong with its aircraft. And the most crucial task before the Air Force right now is getting the Tejas back in the air and ensuring that it is safe to do so.
In Mexico, there's utter chaos and tension. Buses are burning on highways, flights have been cancelled, streets are empty, and people are afraid to leave their homes. It all began after one man was killed. His name was Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes. Most people know him as El Mencho. He was one of Mexico's most powerful drug lords. Yesterday, he was killed by Mexican security forces, and what followed was massive violence. Gunmen linked to El Mencho's cartel blocked roads, torched vehicles, and attacked several cities across the country. Here's a report.
Smoke curls into the sky above a beach resort. A bus burns in the middle of a highway. Passengers run through an airport terminal. This is Mexico today, and it all traces back to one man, Nemesio Oseguera, also known as El Mencho, one of the most powerful and most feared drug lords in Mexican history. El Mencho led the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. It is a criminal organization that grew from a regional gang into one of the most violent cartels in the country. Founded around 2009, it spread across at least 21 Mexican states. The U.S. had placed a $15 million bounty on El Mencho's head. Washington accused his cartel of flooding American streets with cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl. And then he was killed on Sunday in a military operation. Officials say he was wounded in a clash with soldiers and died while being flown to Mexico City. At least 27 Mexican officials and 30 cartel members died in the operation. Several weapons, including rocket launchers, were seized. Authorities say the operation relied on their own military intelligence, with complementary information provided by Washington. But within hours, the cartel members hit back. In the western state of Jalisco, roads have been blocked with burning vehicles. In the city of Guadalajara, shops have been shut and streets are deserted. The violence has quickly spread across several states in the country. Gunmen torch trucks and buses on city highways. Roads sealed, businesses shuttered, and public transport suspended.
Look, now we're scared. We only go out when it's necessary because people don't know whether to go out or what to do.
Security forces have been deployed across affected regions, and the authorities have urged residents to stay indoors. The main objective on this day has been to safeguard the safety of the people. Therefore, early this morning, from this security meeting, which is in permanent session, we activated Code Red, which remains in effect. But the fallout has already spread far beyond the streets. Airports have been affected. Flights have been cancelled, and several travelers have been left stranded. At one of the airports, travelers watched smoke rise beyond the runway and rushed inside for cover. India, the United States, and Canada have all advised their citizens in Mexico to exercise caution. Meanwhile, Mexico's president has urged citizens to remain calm.
Today there is more calm, and there is government, there are armed forces, there is a security cabinet, and there is a lot of coordination. So you can rest assured that peace, security, and normality in the country are being safeguarded.
El Mencho's death has removed a central figure from Mexico's cartel world. Yet experts warn the power vacuum he leaves behind could trigger a fresh wave of violence. Mexico has been grappling with a drug war for decades. From the Guadalajara cartel of the 1970s to El Chapo and the Sinaloa cartel, the country has watched drug lords rise and fall. And each time one falls, the war doesn't end. It just reorganizes. But this time around, Mexico is hoping to beat the trend.
There are viral videos, there are viral animals, and then there's Punch. He's a 7-month-old baby monkey, and he has somehow become the internet's emotional animal. Millions of people are watching him, they're rooting for him, and they're crying about him because he's painfully relatable. So let's start with Punch's story. His full name is Punch-kun. He's a baby macaque living in the Ichikawa City Zoo in Japan. Punch was abandoned at birth by his mother, so the zookeepers raised him. They fed him, they carried him, they comforted him, and eventually they reintroduced him to the monkey troop, because that's where he belongs. But he was struggling to cope. So the zookeepers gave Punch something to help him, a plush orangutan. And almost instantly they bonded. The toy has become his surrogate mother. He drags it everywhere, he sleeps with it, and he holds it when scared. If you watch closely, Punch does not just carry it, he clings to it most of the time.
Baby Japanese macaques immediately cling onto their mother's body after birth to build muscle strength. They also get a sense of security through holding on to something. However, because he had been abandoned, Punch had nothing to grip onto. We tried several options to give him something to hold. We rolled towels into various thickness to find something easy to grasp and let him try holding different stuffed toys.
And the internet cannot stop watching. They love the story of the monkey and his favorite toy. Punch's fame soon jumped from screen to reality. The zoo reported a surge in visitors. People lined up just to see him.
Seeing Punch on social media, abandoned by his parents but still trying so hard, really moved me. So when I got the chance to meet up with a friend today, I suggested we go see Punch together.
His favorite plush toy, made by IKEA, is almost sold out. That's right, a monkey's comfort toy has triggered a retail spike. IKEA tried to ride the wave. They donated more toys to Punch to make sure he always has a plushie. And soon enough, other brands jumped in. Everyone had their own take on the story. Everyone wanted to capitalize on Punch's virality. But then came these videos of Punch being pushed around, a monkey dragging him around, and in most cases, Punch squeals. He breaks free and he runs straight to his toy. He wraps himself around it almost like a protective shield. Now, these videos have gone viral and they've almost triggered a war on the internet. People want to fly to Japan and rescue Punch. But here's what most clips do not explain. This is normal monkey behavior. What people thought was bullying was absolutely normal. The zoo has been at pains to clarify. They say Punch is improving, in fact. He's learning social rules. He's getting groomed, playing more, and communicating better. In other words, he's figuring out life. But the internet is so invested in this story because they see themselves in this monkey. Because Punch represents a universal human memory of being the outsider, the new kid, the awkward one, the one trying too hard to belong. And in fact, there is science behind this obsession too. Humans are hardwired to respond to cute. Large eyes, small body, clumsy movements, helpless behavior. It's called baby schema. These features trigger caregiving instincts, the same biological response that makes adults want to protect babies. Your brain releases bonding chemicals when you watch something adorable. So when Punch clutches his toy, your brain sees it as a vulnerable child needing comfort, and you want to comfort it. And it's not just Punch. From Mu Deng, the hippo, to the penguin that walked away, viral animals become emotional escape routes. And maybe that's why the world cannot stop watching them, because Punch is doing what all of us are trying to do at some level, figuring out life. But here's the thing. Comparing yourself to Punch, that is false equivalence. He's a monkey. You're human. His world runs on instinct. Yours runs on choices. So yes, love Punch and cheer for him, but don't use a baby monkey story to measure your own. Punch's story is his own. It is not a template for human lives. Our final story tonight is from Germany. The country is planning to change how workers take sick leave. You see, right now, German workers can call in sick over the phone. They do not need to visit a doctor. Instead, they just need to make a phone call to their doctor's clinic and they get up to 5 days off with full pay. This rule came in during the Wuhan virus pandemic and has since remained in place. But Chancellor Friedrich Merz now wants it gone. He says rising absenteeism is hurting the German economy. So now his government wants workers to visit a doctor in person before they can take a sick leave. Critics say this move goes too far. Our next report explains why.
A phone call. Up to 5 days off work, full pay. For years, that has been enough for many workers in Germany to call in sick. No trip to the clinic, just a call to their doctor's office. The rule was introduced during the COVID pandemic to keep waiting rooms from filling up. It was later made permanent for short-term illnesses. Doctors could issue a sick note over the phone, usually for up to 5 days, if the patient was already known to them. But now, Chancellor Merz wants to change that. His party, the Christian Democratic Union, has voted unanimously to scrap phone-based sick notes. If the proposal becomes law, workers will have to see a doctor in person before being signed off, even for minor illnesses. And Merz isn't framing this as a minor policy tweak. He's calling it an economic problem. The numbers are hard to ignore. German employees take an average of 15 sick days a year. In Britain, that figure was 4.4 days in 2024. Germany also guarantees full pay for up to 41 days of illness before health insurers step in. As per one estimate, sickness absence costs businesses €82 billion, or over $96 billion every year. That's nearly €1,000 per worker. For an economy already struggling to grow, that is a number that stings. The economy has been stagnant for years. GDP grew by just 0.2% in 2025. Merz argues the country cannot afford what he calls edge-of-the-bed decisions to stay home. His health minister has launched a formal review of the current system. Business leaders are squarely behind the move. The chairman of Mercedes-Benz says high absenteeism has real consequences for business.
When absenteeism in Germany is sometimes twice as high as in other European countries, this has consequences for business.
Some employers have gone even further. They have reportedly hired private detectives to investigate workers they suspect of faking it. But not everyone is convinced. The Social Democrats, who govern alongside Merz, oppose forcing minor cases into clinics. They say phone sick notes reduce infection risks and ease pressure on already stretched surgeries. Trade union leaders have called it highly indecent to treat workers as suspected shirkers. And the medical community is divided. While some say the system invites abuse, others say the data does not support that claim. And Germany is not alone in having this conversation. Finland has discussed making the first sick day unpaid. France has explored tighter follow-ups on long absences. Austria and Spain already use stricter certification checks. Across Europe, governments are wrestling with the same question. How do you protect workers without paying the price in productivity? In Germany, that debate has now spilled into open political conflict. For Merz, cutting absenteeism is about reviving Europe's largest economy. For his critics, it risks treating workers as suspects rather than citizens. The phone call that once kept you home may soon require a trip to the clinic first. Whether that lifts productivity remains to be seen.
India's campaign at the T20 World Cup hit a turbulent patch yesterday. The India cricket team stumbled early, losing to South Africa. Wickets fell like dominoes, runs dried up, and hope logged out. The scoreboard was struggling, but the internet was thriving because while South Africa dominated on the field, India dominated online. Memes flooded timelines, group chats turned into comedy clubs, and cricket fans did what they do best, turning pain into entertainment. Take a look. Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Humanoid robots perform martial arts at Beijing's Temple of Heaven. Activists hang the arrest photo of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor in the Louvre. And visitors flock to the Yosemite National Park for the annual Fire Fall spectacle. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1954, a group of children in America received the first injections of the new polio vaccine. It was developed by Dr. Jonas Salk. By 1959, 90 other countries were using this vaccine. By the 21st century, polio cases were reduced by 99% worldwide. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hello and welcome to Firstpost America, your home for the biggest stories shaping the US and the world. I'm